So if you remember back to when we were implementing Django hosts, we had this like redirect stuff that we kind of talked about, but we didn't actually implement. That's these things down here. So reverse as well as the URL template itself. So now what I want to do is actually have those things work by introducing reverse as a concept and then Django hosts reverse. So if we look inside of our model itself, we have this shortcode here. And then if we look inside the URL that's related to that, we have it right here. So that URL actually handles it. So we can actually name this URL and we can call this shortcode, or just like encoding. Basically, it's the shortcode URL. So we're giving it a name or a shortcut name to actually do this. Now, something that I can do inside of my cur URL is I can write a new method for writing out the actual shortcode itself. So let's go ahead and write out a new method. I'm going to put it underneath Unicode, and I'm also going to get rid of those notes here. We don't need them any longer, as well as this. Okay, so I'm going to make a new method in here, and I'm going to call this define get absolute URL. It's going to take in self, and it's going to return a URL. So in our case, I'm just going to go ahead and write out everything, and that's going to be www. And we called it tur.com/something, and this will be the shortcode, and then do format shortcode equals to self.shortcode. Okay, so this is something you'll see a lot, get absolute URL. That's kind of the convention of it. But we actually don't want to use get absolute URL because this just does a redirect, if you remember how that view works. It does do a redirect. So what I'm going to do instead is call this get short URL, and that's just a method that we have in here. The get absolute URL we're not going to implement because we don't really need it, but the get short URL is something that we do need and we'll end up using. So I can actually render this out on our shortcodes here in this object, and we'll just say get short URL instead of the shortcode on both success and already exists. Render both of those out. We save that, and we go back into our project, refresh, hit continue, and now we've got that URL actually showing up, and it's based off of the actual shortcode. Now that's the long way of writing it. Going back into the models here, that is the long way of writing it, and you do want to have it on the model itself because that is a convenience for doing anything. But the bad thing about this is then I have to change the tur.com, or I need to have that work a little bit differently for us. So what I want to do is a concept called reverse. Now Django has one built in called django.core.url. Oops, we want to import this. So from django.core.url resolvers, we're going to import reverse. So what reverse does, it allows us to use that URL name and create the path as needed. So I'll just say URL path equals to reverse, that URL name, which we called shortcode, and then any arguments that are in there. So let's see what the arguments are. The argument is shortcode as well. If that's confusing at all, let's just call this scode, and we'll keep the argument as shortcode. Go back into the model, we'll call it scode, and shortcode equals to the instances shortcode. So we save that. This URL path now is going to take place of that. So I just do plus URL path. So let's save that, and we'll see what our get absolute URL is now. We'll refresh the form, and we got reverse, got unexpected keyword argument shortcode. Let's go back at our URL, and that is the actual one. So we save that, and we refresh in here. Let's just go ahead and, oops, this is incorrect. We want to do it more like this. And that is keyword args equals to that. Little mistake on that reverse, sorry about that. We refresh in here and hit continue, and we see that this is coming in incorrectly. We probably should see 2 lines, and we do. And we come back into our URL here. We're going to get rid of that. And our URL path is not working correctly. So I'm not 100% positive as to why it's coming so many times. But instead of working with the Django URL resolver of reverse, I want to use the Django hosts version. So to do this, we actually just do Django from Django_hosts URL or .resolvers, import reverse. So this is now the Django hosts resolvers. And in our shortcode, or at least in the reverse itself, we need to add in the host as we see it here. We can still keep those keyword args. It's just like Django's reverse, but we just have to add in host. And in our case, I think it's www. So if we do host equals to www, we save that and we go back into our URLs, refresh. I now see that it's coming through with the hosts and some other longer stuff that's not really making a whole lot of sense as far as the shortcode is concerned. So let's see why. So if I print out the shortcode, let's take a look. Self.shortcode, save that, refresh in here, continue, look in the terminal. Our shortcode is actually long, right? So it's actually there. This is causing a little bit of an issue, and it's probably because of our URLs. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this part out in particular, save that, and we'll refresh in here and hit continue. And now it's actually showing the proper one. But it's not actually rendering the URL as it should. It's just doing www and then that. So going back into the Django hosts documentation, we want to maybe change it ever so slightly to being reverse hosts like this. So we got reverse coming through like that, and then we can change the host. But for whatever reason, our www is not coming through. Well, the reason is because in our settings, if we go into our settings file, let's go into settings, inside of cur settings, and come down in here. We want to add in one more thing, and that is parent host. And we put in the host that we're working with. In our case, we are going to add it as the default redirect URL. So this should come after that. So we save that, refresh, and come back in here and refresh, hit continue. We got a little bit of an error. Let's run that server again and refresh in here, and we'll do CFE blog, hit submit. Now it's showing it twice, as we see here. So all that means is back into our models, we really just need to return this URL path, or at least I think we do. So we refresh in here, we do that, and we're getting that www still. That's because we added all this other stuff. So again, going back into our settings, this is not the correct parent host. Instead, the parent host should just be the .com, because if you think about it, it makes sense to be just the .com, because we have our Django hosts handling our subdomain. So that should actually have the subdomain, which is the host. I refresh again, and now it's showing that subdomain. It isn't the full link, so we can add in, as the Python helpers in the resolve stuff, we can add in the actual scheme here, and we can also add in a port. So let's go back into it, models, and we can go scheme equals to HTTP, and then we can say port equals to 8000. Save that. Now we're going to see two 8000s, but let's see it. Let's refresh it out. And we get int is not iterable. Let's put this into a string. Try that again. And there we go. So we got two 8000s. That's not actually what we want. I'm just going to keep this off for now. Okay, so that is now finally finished a URL. That's a little bit more dynamic, and it's working off of reverse. Now you might be wondering, why would I actually even use reverse versus just writing it out hard, or the hard way of writing it out? Well, it's a couple things, mainly this shortcode stuff here. If you changed how that was rendered or that URL, then you would have to find all instances of that URL and change it. It's just a shortcut method to make sure it's changing dynamically to what that is without us hard coding it. That's really why you would use reverse instead of, again, hard coding it out. Now, if you did hard code it out, it's okay. But the other part of it too was in the settings. When we go live, we can change our parent host to whatever we want it to, and then all of our URLs will change accordingly. Okay, so that's using reverse with Django hosts as well as Django. I do want to check one last thing and add the 6 and 15 here again and see if what that does. One more time, it does actually repeat everything, and that might be just a little slight flaw with that regular expression or possibly reversed. So I just get rid of it and replace it here, and that works just fine. And since it comes last as far as the regular expression is concerned, it's not really going to affect how those shortcodes are rendered or any other pages as well. So thanks for watching this one. We will see you in the next one.